Okay, we will call this meeting to order. Special council agenda tonight, beginning at 6:01 p.m. I'm going to ask for any declaration of interest or in the general nature thereof. If you have a declaration to make, please do it now.
Okay, we will call this meeting to order. Special council.
Oh, there's a delay here. Hang on.
Just a second.
Gotta mute.
Oh, I know the delay.
There's a delay. So,
I know what it is. He's got his TV on.
right. So, we'll move forward in the agenda before we to deal with the housekeeping item that we need to deal with, which is bylaw number 20-025. And the motion coming forward, moved by Councillor Mabey and seconded by Councillor Fody, that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaw number 20-025, and that a bylaw to amend bylaw number 17-063, being a bylaw to govern and regulate the proceedings of the municipal council and the conduct of its members and the calling of meetings for the township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands. Discussion on this motion, gentlemen? I might give you just some background, and I appreciate everybody's patience during these unsettling times, and everything's moving at a very fast pace. So the bylaw that has been presented is in regards to electronic participation, and this is something that's just recently has been passed this afternoon by the legislature, the provincial legislature, and it gives municipalities the ability to meet with electronic participation, and it will cover both public meetings and in-camera meetings during this unique time in provincial history. So I realize that electronic participation is not something that we take lightly, but in light of recent events, this has been brought forward so that in the event any of us or all of us or some of us were self-isolated due to the pandemic, the COVID-19, we would still be able to govern as best we could and still meet. So any discussion on the bylaw as presented? Councillor Gorell.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship, just a question of clarification. On the third whereas clause, it says can participate electronically. I would like that defined clearly, because is it to speak and to vote, or just to speak?
Based on the legislature that was, or the new legislation that was passed today, it's to speak and vote, and both in public and in council or in camera council meetings. The main reason for this is there was a call with the minister yesterday. I'm losing my days. 2 days ago at 4:30 in the afternoon, where he was made aware that there's a number of municipalities where they have multiple councillors who are either self-isolating or have been in direct contact or work in the medical field, all of those sorts of things that we're not comfortable bringing their colleagues in contact, obviously. But yet there was things that needed to be done in light of this pandemic. So the minister took that heed, and that's why this legislation has come forward so quickly. But it is for participation both verbally and to vote. Yes, Councillor Groh.
And just follow up. And further, it says contact the clerk within 12 hours start of the meeting. How will that electronic participation work?
So it would, maybe the Madam Clerk would like to speak to that, to the specifics of that.
So for their electronic participation, it would be via telephone to call in to the meeting. That being said, going forward, there is a portion of the agendas and minutes module through iCompass that will actually allow council to vote live, real time, through the iCompass web portal. So it requires council members to be logged in to their account to be able to do that. But that's going forward from here. Right now, primarily it is electronic via telephone.
Do you want to follow up with that?
So what you described, is that something similar to like go-to meetings? Where it is, you sign into this thing and it has some privilege and some security? Thank you.
So it's no different than like when you would go in to view your council agenda package, and in order to see your closed session information, you have to sign in with your credentials. So you would have to use the same credentials to sign in to allow you to be able to vote or move a motion or second, whatever the case may be.
Councillor Grow?
And it just brings to mind then, because normally we have a quiet vote, would that maybe be wise then that we call the roll at the meeting? Like, who would know how that vote went if it's not a verbal? Thank you.
So I'll let the CAO jump in here.
In municipalities that have adopted this, that don't have the technology that we're going to have moving forward, they establish their own procedure for doing that. It doesn't mean that every vote has to be a recorded vote. The chair can simply ask the person on the phone how they're voting, and they say how they're voting, and it's heard by the rest of the room. And then you can have a show of hands for the rest of it, and it's up to the chair to tally them up.
Any further questions in regards to this bylaw? Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. This particular bylaw is only in effect during the state of emergency that the provincial government has enacted. Will there be any portion of this that may carry on in the future?
It's a very good question. I would say that it would be up to the will of council after this. Because we're in uncharted territory, this is new to all of us. I know that my meeting at county earlier today, same sort of thing. This is not something people are very comfortable with, and I totally understand why. But because of the situation we're in, we need to make provisions in case something more drastic were to happen and we weren't able to leave our homes or otherwise. Councillor Olkey?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, just for general interest or information, I work with these kind of systems internationally at very high levels of security across nations. In my previous life, you get used to doing it. In another organization I'm involved in, it's just been authorized to use this. The program that we're using there is called Zoom. It can be set up for free. It's secure. The federal government uses it and recognizes it. Okay, so I'll just leave that. Thank you.
So just back to Councillor Maybe's point, this is something that after we're done, hopefully, as we move out of this pandemic, if it's something that we've utilized and we feel that it has merit, then we can look at our procedure bylaw to have it instituted for a long-term mechanism if need be. I know that most people are fighting, kicking, and screaming, but we understand the need for it right now. So, any further discussion? Councillor Grow.
And through you, Your Worship, or to you, Your Worship, one final question. Just in both this bylaw amendment and the one coming up, it mentions upon termination of the provincially declared emergency, and the wording in before us is that the township is dealing with the provincially declared emergency. That needs clarification.
Which portion of the bylaw are you
Number
speaking?
6.
Number 6?
Yep. In my
So-
opinion, it needs clarification. The wording should read similarly to the authorization delegation. It should read, will expire upon termination of the provincially declared emergency, perhaps.
So there's two places. It's in here. Sorry, Councillor Gorell, in on the first part, the last whereas, it says committee of the whole and council meetings for the duration of the provincially declared emergency coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. So it's the duration of the provincially declared emergency. So it infers that once that's over, that it does not apply anymore. Or you're looking for some more strong wording.
I'm happy, but a smart lawyer would argue that one. But thanks, I'm satisfied with it.
Okay. Any further discussion on the bylaw as presented? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the bylaw as presented, please signify. All those opposed, carried. Thank you very much. So we will now ask that our Councillor Jameson participate via phone this evening. So thank you. Councillor Jameson, can you identify yourself?
Yes, I'm Councillor Jameson.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me into the Star Chamber.
Thank you very much for attending. Okay, so... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Your Worship, if I could just ask Councillor Jameson to watch any background noise near the phone, because it picks it up on a microphone here. Thank you.
Okay, next bylaw on the agenda is moved by Councillor Mabey, seconded by Councillor Fody, that 3 readings and final passage be granted to a bylaw number 20-018 to being a bylaw to appoint the Chief Administrative Officer and Deputy Clerk for the Township of Leeds in the Thousand Islands. Discussion on this motion. Councillor Mabey and then Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Again, we've had a lot of deliberation on this particular move for our township and feel it is a very positive action, and that through the process of our committee who looked at all the resumes and took due diligence in going through it and grading them, I do feel that they brought a great candidate forward who has accepted this position, and look forward to working with Stephen in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Mabey. Councillor Fody?
Thank you.
Oh, turn on your mic.
Sorry. Through you, Your Worship, pretty much reiterate what Councillor Mabey has said. I think we owe those who did apply a thank you for doing so, because in this type of format, they never get a response back. So, it helps provide the pool of qualified people that we did have. And we just want to thank them, and to the successor, we look forward to our future. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this motion? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Mabey.
I did forget one thing,
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor. Thank you, Stephen Potter, for all the work that you have done to help us move forward in the last year. And with our mayor, both did a great job at moving us forward and getting us to this state. Thank you for your great work.
Councillor Olkey.
Thank you, Your Worship. And to extend a bit upon Councillor Mabey's comments, I also like to recognize my balcony buddy, Councillor Jameson, who loaned his vast experience to the same process. Thank you.
Any further comments on the motion as it's been presented? I'll just bookend the comments being made that we are very pleased to move forward with the new CAO, and we thank the acting CAO for his time and his efforts over the past 12 plus months. This wasn't a decision we took lightly, and the process showed that. And we have the utmost confidence that Stephen Donachie will be the leader we require to move forward, and especially in these very interesting times that we are in these days. So, having said that, thank you, Deputy Mayor Lackey, along with Councillor Jameson, for being on the committee and then bringing everything forward to the full council for final decision. So thank you very much. CAO, you want to make a last comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank the councillors for their comments. It's been a great and very productive years, and I'd like to thank staff, senior staff in particular, but all staff for the support and a lot of changes, a lot of progress in the last year that's positioned us well to deal with the situation we have these days. So thank you very much. And just to clarify that there were a lot of candidates. The ones that were interviewed were thanked and phoned and thanked for their participation. But as Councillor Fody noted, a lot of people applied. They're not responded to all, but the ones we interviewed certainly got feedback on that, and I support the council's decision on that competition.
Thank you very much. To the rest of council, any further comments to be made? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, carried. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Councillor Jameson, I didn't ask how you voted. I should ask, are you a yay or a nay?
Yay.
Yay. Thank you. It's when he goes to speak. Okay, so next on the agenda is the bylaw number 20-026, Delegation of Authority. Moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaw number 20-026, with being a bylaw to authorize the delegation of authority for certain acts during a provincially declared emergency. Discussion on this motion. Councillor Gorell?
And to you, Your Worship, in reading this, just a few general terms and points. Could you clarify, put some clarity to it as to what we mean by delegate certain authorities? And in general terms, why is this necessary? We've just passed an electronic bylaw that allows us to speak electronically, which opens it up that we don't have to be sitting in this chamber. And yet this document takes us a little bit away from that. And I just wonder if you could elaborate on it for me. Thank you.
Well, seeing that this is my first emergency situation, trial by fire, I believe these delegated authority bylaws are being passed in almost, if I'm not mistaken, almost all, if not all, of the other municipalities within the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. Essentially what it's meant to do is that in the event that we are in need to make a decision in regards to resources, if I'm going to use masks as an example. If we needed to get masks for all of the staff and we needed to buy those and it wasn't in the budget, it gives me the ability to buy those that the CAO and I would talk about it and say, okay, this makes sense in a provincially declared emergency, but it's only during that emergency situation. Likely it will not need to be used, but in the event that this progresses in a way that we have yet to see, it gives the ability for me, along with the CAO, to make decisions on behalf of council. Generally speaking, I wouldn't do that without probably reaching out to you guys anyways. But when these things are so fluid and ever changing by the hour, sometimes these decisions have to be made fairly quickly. So unless the CAO has something better to add, I don't know if there's anything. You've been through some of this stuff more so than I.
Yeah, I would echo that, and it's typically something I've been through before in other emergency situations, and typically it's exercised in just what the mayor says. It's nothing extraordinary, just something that there's the need, and the mayor has to report back to council and justify our action anyway. So it'd be something like mass or something that we need done right away. And if you look at this week, we've gone through 3 or 4 different phases of a response to the current crises. And in 5 days. And so it just allows us to act to that, to buy stuff that may need to be bought. And it's a typical thing that's done. Other municipalities have approved them.
So just as some context, though, for example, the delegation of authority bylaw that's in North Grenville is strictly to the CAO. It doesn't require the mayor. We felt that it was important that someone from council be involved in that decision, that it wasn't just strictly a staff member making those calls. And so I'll allow Councillor Gorell for a follow-up, and then Councillor Olkey.
Quick follow-up then, Your Lordship. Would that be head of council in consultation with CAO, or is that necessary in this document?
Believe that it is the two of us that make the decision together.
That's right, and we'd follow the procedural, the policies where the CAO may have certain authority up to a certain amount, but requires council approval. Instead of coming to council, I go to the mayor and get that approval, and the mayor would be reporting back. And the reason it's better for the mayor is because the mayor is responsible to council. Not to say that I'm not, but you're better to put such authority in the role of the CEO, and that's the mayor. The CAO already has authority up to certain limits. It's just when I have to go beyond that, I can go to the mayor instead of waiting to call a council meeting to get a vote on something.
Councillor Oakey?
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, just another general comment. In crisis situations, decisive action by executive is the norm, and it's what people would expect. It may be a little bit away from our practice, but under present circumstances, I believe it's necessary. Thank you.
Councillor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question, would this bylaw cover a situation where, because of illness or worse, it would, that we would not have quorum? Would that cover this situation? Maybe Councillor Olkey has been there, or CAO?
I believe it would, because with this delegation, I would be able to make that judgment call in that particular situation. Councillor Maybe, did you have a comment? No? Oh, sorry. Councillor Jameson, do you have anything to add? Councillor Jameson?
Yeah,
Do you
I
have
nothing to add.
nothing to add? Okay, thank you.
No. I certainly support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Olkey?
Just as a point of clarity, though, leading from what Councillor Fody raised, there should be a clear succession that were you incapacitated in crisis.
I believe that would fall to the deputy mayor.
But is that stated clearly?
It says head of council, so if I'm incapacitated, then the deputy mayor then becomes the head of council. Thank you. Good question. Further questions in regards to the bylaw as it's presented? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. Councillor Jameson?
Affirmative.
Affirmative. Thank you. It passes unanimously. Thank you. And the confirmation bylaw, I should say. Moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that three readings and final passage be granted to bylaw number 20-027 to be the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Township of Leeds in the Thousand Islands at its special meeting of council held March 19th, 2020. Discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. Councillor
Affirmative.
Thank you. Carries unanimously. Next, before we go in camera, did we want to do, yes, we'll do the updates from, sorry, I got ahead of myself with my motions. Wrong one. So I'm looking for staff updates now. The fire chief is first on the list, so we'll let the fire chief explain to us what he has done and what he is doing in regards to the current COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. The fire department is at full staff at this time. We have no reported illnesses. Most are being diligent about their cleanliness, hand washing, separations. We've canceled all meetings at the fire stations, group meetings with even the officers or the firefighters themselves. Training meetings, any gatherings, even the fish fry coming up has been canceled. Ground rentals, everything is on hold until further notice. The gym area has been closed as of today and posted, and all fobs are going to be terminated on that opening into that area. We've added extra disinfectants, vehicle cleaning products, and hand sanitizers, goggles, masks. We did acquire a bunch of them, so we do have them on the trucks. Dispatch has been mandated to ask questions when they take that 911 call. They screen the person before they actually send out the fire department. So we know what we're going to in the meantime. We've downsized any of the bigger rescue trucks. We use the pickup trucks only for medical calls now. 2-person response, which is sufficient for most medicals. We're done away with just a scribe. So we're not taking a lot of notes. We're going to do them after the fact. 1 person to go in and ask questions at the door, screen the person at the door again, and then enter to assess a patient or whatever. They were issued question cards and so on so that they can rhyme it down as a quick response if they have to get to a patient who is in respiratory difficulties. The pickups are equipped with all the gear necessary, and it's a smaller area to clean. Once we get back, that's disinfected inside. Smaller truck makes it a little quicker for getting it back on the road. All possible precautions are taken out on the road. At an accident scene, of course, if a person's unconscious, you can't very well screen them. Usually susceptible to bodily fluids and so on. So we've all possible precautions, double gloving, full PPE, even go to the fact that if you have to, go to your BAs, full bunker gear for those types of calls. We've got a memorandum out that anybody gets sick, report to the office, make sure that you self-quarantine. We're not taking any chances that it infects a whole station. However, if it is been found that this person is COVID-19 positive, then we got to close the station. We've got 1 station that will be out of service if they've all been contacted into that. We will cleanse the station as well at that time. We're forwarding regular updates to the members as we meet as an EOC in our meetings, emergency group. Anything that comes out of that, we forward to them immediately so they know updates are available there. We've put in place contingency plans should a station be affected and out of service. We've got mutual aid services from other communities. We do have 4 stations that can respond to the same areas, and we will be advising people that if, say, Station 4 was out of service, Station 1 and 2 would be immediately dispatched to that same area. So we'll be covering that way. We've moved to keep the admin office and the admin officers, myself and the deputy chief, have separated now. We don't meet. We meet electronically. We have pretty well closed the office over here. Kim is only going to be in a day or 2 a week to do updates or whatever. Do some of the work that she can't do remotely, which is the crisis updates and so on. I'll be working mostly from home or from the meetings. We will have some meetings I'll probably have to attend, but we will be in contact or not in contact with the deputy chief. We've doubled up an order for sanitizers, which is supposed to arrive tomorrow. I ordered extra for the township in general, so we hopefully will have extras to spread around. We've signed are going to have signage on the doors tomorrow and separations like we talked about today at the meeting, keeping the roads department and the fire department separated. I've talked to Kim and she's to contact Trish tomorrow, and they're going to have the building. So this door is roads, this door is fire, so on. So we're not getting cross-contamination too much there. All the fobs will be deactivated tomorrow morning. And that's about it for what we've taken so far.
Chief, can you also finish, before you finish, can you also speak to the group in regards to the insurance that's held on behalf of the volunteer firefighters, just for clarification for the group? Thank you.
Certainly. I did call the VFIS insurance that we hold each year on the volunteers. Covers them while they're on the job, after the job, if they come down with cancers or anything else. They are covered. It's one of the few insurance companies which do cover the contamination and from disease of any kind that they contract on the job. So they are covered for sure. I also contacted, as we discussed today, the CBSA to talk about what they're doing at the border as you come across to be repatriated into Canada. The supervisor at the front desk said, well, we asked them the questions. We give them the screening at the counter. If you give them some information on COVID, what they should do, tell them to go home and self-isolate. So I asked the question, what happens if somebody's experiencing, symptoms on the site, or tells you, yeah, I've had a fever all day, I've been sick, my wife had to take over driving, so on. He explained that they would send them to a quarantine area, simply give them a mask, some more different information, send them on their way home, tell them to go directly home and self-isolate again. They do fill out a form at the border, and other than that, they're sent home and contact Ministry of Health should there be any lasting effects. But other than that, they ask the simple questions of where you've been, any cruises on cruise ships, have you been out of the country to a COVID-19 hotspot country such as Italy or China, and basically run that screening program right at the primary.
Thank you very much, Chief, and we appreciate the information. Questions from Council? Councillor Gorell, and then Councillor Maybe, then Councillor Fody.
Thank you very much, through you, Your Worship. Thanks very much, Rick. That's a wholesome update. And I was just wondering, I know a lot of the work occurs up in that 401 with the OPP, and I just wondered, I imagine, or I would hope, that we're coordinating somehow with what they may or may not be doing as well. Thanks.
Through Your Worship, the OPP usually give us an update through dispatch. So on the way to the scene, we'll probably get an update saying we have identified a sick person in this vehicle, whatever. Of course, if they're unconscious, dead, whatever, it's a different story. You can't screen them at that point. We have to do extrications and so on. It would come to a point where full bunker gear, full gear, PPE is going to be required to keep us safe in any sort of situation there.
Councillor Maybe, and then Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Chief Lawson. On the CBS, when you talked about people going through that may have had the virus, are they tracking them further from that because they obviously have their name with the passport and such? Are they passing that information on to anybody to indicate that they are being self-isolating, or?
Through you, Your Worship, the answer I got about that question was that the Ministry of Health don't want anyone's information from the border. They're saying they fill out a form and you're sent home to basically 14-day isolation. If your information you're given explains that if the symptoms escalate and keep getting worse, you're to contact the Ministry of Health at that point. They're advising, I think today they've upped the number of call-in centers, number of lines at Ministry of Health, and hopefully they can answer your questions and then screen you there again and possibly advise you better go to the hospital.
Okay. And I did have a second question, and it comes from your bunker gear. When you attend one of these and suspect possibly, is the bunker gear being cleaned before you get back in the truck, before you get back in the fire hall? Where?
Through Your Worship, at this time we are bagging that gear. We will return to the station probably in the truck. It's already contaminated. We're going to return to the station. The gear is bagged in double plastic. We're in the process of finding the hazardous material bags to put it in. It's just a yellow bag, basically. It's sent to the cleaners in Gatineau, Quebec, and cleaned and brought back.
Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our fire chief. Are our stations or vehicles or firefighters themselves equipped with a remote thermostat to diagnose patients? Or I shouldn't say so much patients, but to diagnose people to see if they're carrying or have a fever?
Through you, Your Worship, no, we don't diagnose anything. We simply screen. The questions are, have you been out of the country? Have you been to a hotspot similar to what the questions they ask at the border? Do you experience any symptoms? Have you got a fever? Have you got a sore throat? Have you got chest congestion? Are you short of breath? We go through that, and it's a positive if you answer yes to any of those questions, basically. And at that point, then you got to take extra precautions. Make sure that you realize you have to clean the truck when you get back. Your gear is now out of service. You possibly would have to go into isolation if it did get exposed for some reason. Somebody coughed and it got all over you. Yeah.
Follow up?
Just yes, a follow up, please. The remote thermostats I'm referring to, I'm sure you know what they are. They are available and they're cheap. I've used them. I have one. I just wondered if it isn't we can discuss afterwards, but I think it would be a real good tool to outfit each of the vehicles with. It wouldn't be all that costly. I had mine tested one time by a fire department in Colorado, and I said, can I check my accuracy against yours? And it was within 2 degrees when the temperature exceeded 400 Celsius or 400 Fahrenheit. So they're pretty accurate.
Through you, Your Worship, we do have all kinds of diagnostic equipment that we can actually take your blood pressure. We can do temperature, different things like that. But that's no indication that you could be having an allergic reaction or an anaphylactic reaction or whatever. So us being able to say this is a COVID-19 person, we can say it's suspect because of the questions we ask, the symptoms we're seeing, the readings we're getting from our SpO2 monitors. Therefore, we can say probably needs to be transported. At that point, we're usually have been already dispatched from ambulance. We're the first response because we're closer. Maybe they've got an ambulance because at this time they're probably busier than normal. They may have an ambulance that's only a half hour out, have to come from Brockville or wherever. We're within 10, 15 minutes. They'll dispatch us because of the shortness of breath. And although at this point, ambulance, EMS, CAC Center are doing their part by screening as you call in and say, I'm sick, I got chest congestion. They're going to go through the screening process, and quite often they're not going to call us. They're going to keep us out of the loop. Just merely if it's a real bad case, say my husband just quit breathing, say, or I can't rouse him or anything, he's gone unconscious, then we'll probably be sent to the real severe cases. But where it's suspected that we've been sick all day, there's a fever now, we've got a cough, they're going to say we'll be coming, but they're even changing their protocol on that as well.
Councillor Oakey.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just, again, general information. You could demonstrate these symptoms the Chief is talking about for any number of things. They can only tell if it's COVID-19 by taking a deep throat swab and sending it through a lab. And it takes about 3 days to get that result right now. There's no way the fire department has that skill. Thanks.
So, questions? Any further questions? I would just like to add that to the public that are watching, it is imperative that if you do call an ambulance, that you are absolutely 100% truthful. That if you have been out of the country or you feel that you have been exposed to someone who has confirmed case of COVID-19, I did see this posted by Frontenac Paramedic Service that even if you say that you suspect that you have this or you've been exposed to it or you've been out of the country, they will still come and get you. They will not refuse to come and get you. There's no reason to be untruthful. please be upfront. It's important so that people can take proper precautions. In this particular case, just the truth is the best possible protection we have for all of the people involved, including EMS and fire and anybody else who might attend the scene. So thank you. If there's no further questions for the report from the fire chief, I'll thank him for that. And we'll move on to the CAO and in regards to staffing and services update. CAO?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to council and the public. Director Goodman is here, and she'll be providing an update from a community and business service perspective. My update is from a staff and organizational perspective, what we've done in response to this crisis. And as I said earlier, since Monday, we've gone through 3. We're in our 4th phase now of response. By Monday, we will have implemented the 4th phase of our response, which we hope will carry us through the duration of this crisis, no matter how long it takes. And staff has done an excellent job to respond, very cooperative. The Emergency Management Organization Group was formed as the way to address this. It wasn't a declared emergency by our township at the time, but most other municipalities formed that group because that allows for senior management to get together in a structured environment with our Community Emergency Management Coordinator, the Deputy Clerk, Kim Westgate, as well as the Mayor. So Council has representation on that group. We've met every day at 1 o'clock, sometimes, well, it started off a couple of hours, an hour and a half and an hour, but we've met every day. We'll be meeting tomorrow as well to put the final touches on our plan, which will begin on Monday. But all the way along, we've incrementally taken steps to ensure continuity of service and protection of our staff and the public. As well, during the week, I was in constant or daily contact with other CAOs within our county and beyond, just to touch base on what they were doing, we were doing, and we were keeping pace with them. I would say on Monday we'll be leading the way along with maybe one other municipality as to our response to the degree of it, which I think is appropriate. Some people can accuse you of overreacting, but in a situation like this, you take that as a compliment. The main goals is to provide service to the public, continuity of service, and provision of essential service, and determination of what that is and what it isn't. And at the same time, we need to protect our staff, because in providing continuity of service, we're taking a look at backup. Now, the work over the past year that we've done that Council has approved, the upgrades to our IT, the reorganization of the office and of certain aspects of operations has provided backup in all positions, so that we're able now to separate staff. And that's the key to maintaining continuity, is that if, as the chief notes, if one person comes down, then it can take out the entire staff. So we've divided up the staff so that we have backup, and they'll be in basically 2 shifts so that they don't cross paths. So if we lose half of them that have to go self-isolate, we have other staff backed up. And also in talking to neighboring CAOs, if we lost both sections of staff, there's plans for backup from neighboring CAOs. We get into a sharing situation. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. So all these plans are in place, and they'll be communicated to staff. The areas where we need staff on site, there's a lot of work from home that's going to be done. Staff will be sent home. They'll continue to receive their pay, as is common with most governments and large organizations. You want to keep money going out into the community. You want to protect your staff and retain your valuable staff. And so they'll be working from home as best as possible. But unfortunately, we can't have everything done from home. The primary area is finance. We're well ahead in that, but we're not set up yet to operate out of the cloud remotely. So we need certain staff on site, and that's a key part of our operation is keeping the finances up. So we're going to have certain staff on site that are isolated in their office. That's why we've closed the doors to the public. The public will be able to call in, and Director Goodman may touch on that, and be able to leave a message, and there'll be 24-hour turnaround. Staff will get back to them. And so the working at home is important, but we can't do it all from home. So that's why we have this separation in the office. And as the chief pointed out, in similar things that are happening in fire services are also happening in operations. I've been working with Director Goheen, who's been proving that you can operate and manage departments from a distance. And the work crew is separated into two groups now, one in the north and one in the south, and they'll remain separate so that there's backup there. So if one falls down, there's staff available to fill in, to do critical things, if there was flooding and whatever. So the services that will be maintained that you shouldn't see a difference, like fire services, will be operations. They'll be running pretty much full tilt. The areas of there'll be reduced building inspections. We'll still be able to do that, but that's going to be limited to essential. If the public has an immediate need to see somebody, and sort of on an emergency or a very special basis, we'll be able to arrange that, but we ask just to keep that to a minimum. We'll be able to address most of the concerns over the phone. So our full staff complement will be available to talk to the public over the phone. We just want to follow the government's direction and minimize contact. So the social distancing is very important. The hand washing with soap, preferably. Hand sanitizer, if you don't have it, is very important, and all our staff will be following that. So we have a plan in place that will allow us to move forward and continue to provide service to the public. Unfortunately, there's services that have been postponed, and I'll leave that, Your Worship, for Director Goodman to cover. Are there any questions?
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for the CAO and the report that he's given? Councillor Garrell and Councillor Fody.
Thank you, and thank you, Stephen, for that report. Just a question. I am sure, or I would hope, that planning is doing absolutely everything it can to help make sure contractors through a tough time are getting their permits and so on. And I do appreciate that building inspections may be challenging, but I would hope that we're going to do our very best to keep them running. Thanks.
Director Venditti.
Thank you, through your worship. We did post on the website and in a media release earlier this week that building inspections will continue on a limited basis. The inspectors will inspect new construction, will screen people when they call in to ask for an inspection to determine, first of all, what the construction is. It is a renovation inside an occupied dwelling. If there's anybody within that occupied dwelling, there will be caution and care taken. Some inspections may not occur under those circumstances. In other inspections, we are asking that social distancing occur so that any contractors not be on site, and that it just be the inspector on site who will not engage, who will only inspect the work required. We're also looking at alternative options for inspections where photographs or video inspections can occur. So we're looking at doing that. I can say the number of permit applications have decreased significantly over the last week, and I anticipate that that trend will likely continue. As CAO Potter indicated, we will continue to operate at a reduced level, but the building inspector, the CBO, will continue to be in here with the building admin at least a day a week, just so that they can go through the applications, understand what needs to be scheduled. In addition, inquiries and conversations can happen over the phone and via email.
CAO, do you want to add something to that?
I just thought I'd give you an example. Since Director Medidi mentioned building inspector in 1 day a week, that's because they'll be coming in Monday, because the finance staff is needed at the outset from Tuesday to Friday to get the work done. And also, so we don't have cross-contamination, the other staff are coming in Monday. On Friday, and another staff person who does the bank recs will come in on Monday and not cross paths with the finance staff, because on Friday, if you leave this virus on paper, it takes 3 days to dissipate. 2 perhaps on paper, so we're hoping, but by the time it's left on the Friday, it'll be actually left on the Thursday in isolated area. The person doing the bank recs comes in on Monday, does them, clears out. The payroll person comes in on Tuesday. And so the person on Monday is the backup for payroll, accounts payable, and taxation. So it's a little bit of a game, but we do, and with limited staff, it's difficult, but because of people are trained in the backup, we're in good position.
Okay, I'll ask Ms. Goodman to give us the rundown. Oh, Councillor Jameson, did you have anything to ask of the CAO before we move on to Ms. Goodman? Okay. Okay, so no questions from Councillor. Oh, Councillor Foti, I apologize.
That's okay, thank you. Through your worship to our acting CAO, can you clarify the most current standing with regards to people coming in to make payments at the office here? Is that still the case, or is everything done remote now? I've been asked that question a number of times the last couple of days.
Good question, and counts, and your worship, Director Goodman will be able to cover that.
Thank you, Director Goodman.
All right, I have a lot of information to share with you this evening, Council, both from my hat as Director of Community and Business Services, but also, as I'm sure you're aware, I'm the Public Information Officer under our Emergency Control Group. So where we haven't officially enacted that, we are attempting to take a very proactive role in terms of communications, and Marnie provides alternate for that position. So as I'm sure you can appreciate, recreation and community services actually has been significantly impacted by the provincial and federal direction that has been provided in terms of closure of facilities. So one thing that we've been doing in terms of providing community service is to make sure that when we closed all of our municipal facilities for public access, that our staff reached out and personally connected with every one of our program instructors, program participants, facility renters, and whatnot to communicate the nature of the closure, as well as what our plans are for when we're back up and operational. So for example, an email went out to program participants, like our swim participants today. Recreation guides, which we completed about 3 weeks ago and went to publish, should be landing in people's mailboxes any day now. And of course, I'm sure you can appreciate that our program delivery has been significantly impacted. Therefore, CARE is trying to be incredibly proactive in terms of reaching out and saying, we encourage you to register for summer programs, but please be aware, this is kind of a very fluid time in terms of when we're going to be allowed to open up and whatnot. So again, we're really trying to be proactive in communications there. We're also working very closely with operations in terms of posting service disruption notices so that every one of our facilities has posted on the public access doors that the facility is closed, the reason why, and where they can reach out to obtain additional information. So again, trying to provide that not only on our website and on social media, but it is airing on My FM radio right now and has been physically posted. So again, every step that we take, we're trying to be very conscientious of the fact that not everybody's at home on social media. Not everyone has access to internet. So again, moving along with some of that, the other measure that we've taken is, again, in coordination with Kim Nichols, who oversees our security under our clerk, Vanessa Latimer, and with operations, is significantly reducing contractor access to our facilities. This might be HVAC service providers or pest control or whatever the case may be, where we may have been, and I'm going to use the term a little bit more liberal with their access, but I don't mean like it's an open door. But what we've done is reached out to every one of those as well, and we're limiting their access to our facilities so that we don't have limited staff in here and somebody comes walking in the back door or into the public works garage, just as an example, that they are to report by phone and that we would accommodate their access as required for the service delivery that is required at that particular time. Ms. Vendetti and I have been working very closely in terms of releasing now 3 media releases to public, and every one of those has gone a little bit further in terms of depth and breadth of information to try to keep our residents up to date with where things stand. So that was, moving with with facility closure to office closure, et cetera. And again, at every turn, we're trying to facilitate public access. Some of the ways in which we're doing that is we've actually installed a wireless doorbell on the front door now. So where the building is closed, if a delivery person comes forward, that they can ring the bell and that the staff internally are still able to respond. Again, we're posting phone numbers, email addresses so that staff can be best contacted, and staff are making the commitment to follow up within 24 business hours. Additionally, we've been posting a lot of information through social media, trying to share information from credible sources such as the local health unit, for example, with their current updates, things like accessing employment insurance and whatnot, because there's an abundance of that information out there, and we want to make sure that it's getting into the hands of our residents. The other thing, and I believe council received a draft, sorry, I've already marked mine up extensively, but you've received a draft of the web page content that we are in the process of developing. And what it does is identifies municipal services, what we're providing, our current service level, and our contact information. It then goes on to provide very specific information on municipal services and how you can approach or access them, which includes bylaw enforcement, building permits, council and committee meetings. We're going to add community grants. Let me see, fire services, library services, planning services, property tax payments. So I'll come around to your question, recreational services, roads, waste sites, and tickets. Again, if I can go through every one of those if you would like in some detail, or just leave that more on a question basis. As it stands, as of exactly this moment, we have not yet extended the tax deadline, but however, are communicating with residents that there are a number of ways that they can currently pay any utility bills or taxes. We have the facilitation through their bank, through online payments, telephone banking. Most financial institutions can accommodate. They can pay by check. And one of the things that our accounts payable, receivable, and I were discussing today, because we have the drop boxes, putting something outside with envelopes, because we have had people coming into the door. If it were me, I'd have my check in my pocket and I'd be cruising in, and I wouldn't necessarily have an envelope. So to try to provide that added degree of service. Because we have options available for payment at this time, we are encouraging people to pay as originally posted, I believe March 31st being the deadline. However, we do recognize that that information, and regardless of the number of means that we have, may not work for some people. So at this present time, we are encouraging residents to call in if they're going to have a challenge, so that we can perhaps consider special accommodation, for example, deferring penalty payments. Now, I understand that some other municipalities are taking various approaches to this, and unfortunately, that is not my call to make. I believe that is yours. The other key things for council's awareness is that our waste sites are in fact operating as per usual. We have several methods for picking up tickets within the community. In fact, I believe we delivered additional tickets just today to the Lyndhurst Home Hardware. That includes the construction waste tickets and amnesty cards, which are not usually available through all of our vendors. But again, in recognizing that we are kind of in special circumstances, that we want to make sure that those access points are available to our residents. The community grants, as I referenced earlier, we recognize that we have a deadline coming up of April 3rd. At this point in time, we have communicated through social media, through email channels, and have posted on our website that we are extending that deadline by 2 weeks. What this does is allows for community organizations who may have been distracted by their own COVID-related issues, or for community groups who are right at this point in time struggling to meet to develop an application. However, by bumping it back 2 weeks, it still allows us to bring that to you as council in May, so it doesn't defer the flow of payment out into the community so that they can carry on projects. We recognize that this situation could kind of start sunsetting in 3 weeks, and it could be 3 months. However, staff internally are still making every effort to make sure that those events that we've planned out in the community, we're still kind of pushing ahead with those, so that if that trigger flips the other way, we're not going to come into a summer where we don't have activities and events in our playgrounds and recreational and leisure programs for our seniors or our youth in the community. Again, we're going to take this information. It will be published online, we hope, tomorrow. We will be issuing a press release announcing that we have a centralized site, and you will be able to access this directly off the front page with a COVID-related button. So not only will we have a banner, but we will have a hot link so that people don't have to navigate through our website to find that information. But additionally, we are going to condense this information and have it published in all of our local newspapers. Again, recognizing that not everyone has access to the multiple online processes and whatnot. Again, to reiterate what CAO Potter was discussing earlier, staff are working diligently internally to determine what are essential services, how we're best going to manage what programs, services, et cetera, that we're able to conduct while not mitigating or without putting any staff or public at risk. So we're being very mindful in terms of how we communicate that we are encouraging that continued social distancing, even going so far as we had to cancel a booking in our community hall early, and we recognized that that organization was trying to perhaps access another facility. And we reached out again to caution them that we understand that people still really want to try to get together, and that social isolation for some members of our community is incredibly challenging. So again, with the support of a co-op student that we have who's working with me remotely, that we're actually developing some additional resources that we want to make available to our community. So how you can overcome social isolation, how you can still continue to get exercise and fresh air, but being mindful of that contact and maintaining appropriate distances and whatnot. One of the key things that we're going to be looking for now moving ahead as we're kind of continuing to engage public with municipal services is really start to focus on business related services. So we understand that the slowdown in tourism, the reduction in hours is going to have significant impact on our micro and small businesses. And while it's slow to start coming at this point, we do anticipate there will be an escalation of program services and funding available to our local businesses, and that we will be working as a team to make sure that we are finding the best ways of engaging and communicating with our local businesses to help facilitate their awareness of and access to these programs. I think that's kind of it in a nutshell, but of course there's a lot of things I can't cover in that bit of time. So if you have questions about particular services, feel free to fire.
The CAO has something to add, and then I'll recognize Councillor Maybe, then Councillor Garrell.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Director Goodman, for that. I just wanted to add to the report information from Director Goheen that as of today, all of the capital projects that have been approved appear to be going ahead. He hasn't received any word that they can't. It's important that that happens because that gets money out of the community into workers, and that's what you need in these times. As well, he's proceeding with all of the RFPs because we don't, whether this is 3 weeks or 3 months, we want to be able to pick up and carry on when we're out of this. So that is all proceeding. I just want to make a note to council members. I talked about separation. Well, that includes you. But you are still welcome to call directors as you have full access to them to ask any questions. And if there's a need to meet, sometimes that's necessary. You'll be able to meet with senior staff in this room here. Just book an appointment and come in, and you can sit on either side of the room and keep your distance because we cannot have people from outside in the staff area. So, but you're still welcome. The same connection, and welcome to call in. Thank you.
Councillor Maybe?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. In regards to the taxes, I know that you're planning on doing the same time frame, but when people who have small income lose their job and still need that cash to possibly live, is there any way that we as council can defer those taxes? And I don't want to mean per case, but just a generality that we can. There's certainly people who can afford and pay it and are still working. So those people we would expect to continue that process. But there's certainly people in our community that do not have that ability of a large bank account and certainly need those funds to help sustain themselves for the 3 to 3 months, 6 months in our community, because we want them to stay. So from that point of view, I would like to see us try to draft or come up with some sort of motion perhaps to help those residents deal with this crisis so that they feel comfortable. We as a council in this township have been very fortunate to have looked after our monies well, and I think we can do something like that. And on a second note, with the dump fees and stuff like that, with the number of people who are at home, the necessary to have increased garbage is most likely possible. So could we do a 2-for-1 bag, something to actually, still help out, and they might only have double the garbage. So I don't see that as a big issue with our township to help mitigate and help those people out. Those are the only comments I have at this moment.
So before I go to Councillor Gorell, just to be clear, Councillor, maybe you're looking for some sort of grace period for the time being. I know that some other municipalities have given an additional 30 days. The only thing that I would caution you as a whole on is that we will definitely have this conversation in a much larger debate further on down the road, because the interim isn't the problem. It is 6 months, a year from now, because depending on how long this goes on and what happens to certain businesses and jobs and what have you. And I'm certainly not, I'm forever an optimist, but I'm also a realist, and the effects of this will be far-reaching for quite some time. So if you're looking for an immediate deferral, that's something we can entertain at this table. That needs to be a motion put forward, which I believe we can entertain this evening. And then, so if you want to sit and think on that and let Councillor Gorell go forward with your comments, and then you can draft something if you're willing to. Go ahead, Councillor Gorell.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. Thanks very much, Kim, for your synopsis. And I was just wondering, I was reading the other day the community health at the county level, and they had the programs that they'd canceled and so on. And I know it's not quite our wheelhouse, but I also know that you have a great concern for our seniors. And I noticed, in this example, Meals on Wheels was still operational, and it brought to my mind, and I don't want to add to your plate too much, but coordinating what we know about our township, is that anything we need to do or think about with county, or are they pretty good at what they do and entrenched in it? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gorell, and through you, Mayor. That's one of the programs, actually, as I indicated earlier. So we're currently working, we're very fortunate actually to have a co-op student working with us from Algonquin College for a period of 5 weeks. Now, this young lady will be working remotely, and so it will be very much project-based, because unfortunately I can't give her the day-by-day at this particular time. And the piece that she has just emailed me this evening, actually, is focused on our more senior population. So just in terms, as I'd indicated, how to overcome social isolation, what transportation and medical services might be available and how you might best access them. The other thing that we are very conscientious of, and to date, we've been mostly through social media, but for example, Wheels of Care has reached out to both Gananoque and ourselves and asked if we could share messages on their behalf in terms of what their current service delivery model is at. And perhaps I can make a better effort of, again, trying to continue to centralize that information perhaps on that COVID site, or at least make sure that our frontline staff, whatever that may look like as we continue to move ahead, have the most relevant and pertinent information at hand.
Go ahead, Councillor Gorell.
Thank you for that, Kim. Excellent. And just following up on Councillor Maybe's question regarding taxation and so on. Without putting a motion on the floor, perhaps it would be better to ask the staff treasurer for a report on any tax deferral, whether it means any borrowing on the township's part, something broader than just an immediate tax deferral. We should have some thoughtfulness into that one. Thank you.
I'm going to recognize the CAO. He has something to add to this conversation.
Thank you, Your Worship. The two topics, the waste sites and the deferral, has been discussed by staff in their meetings, and the Director of Finance, Treasurer, the due date for tax bills is tomorrow, right? It's the 20th, yeah. So that she is taking a look at what's outstanding and comparing that to the typical amounts that haven't been paid in the past, and we'll have a report. And as the mayor mentioned, probably the crunch will come at the next go around if this progresses. And so we'll see what the impact was. And it's something that the mayor could consider with her delegated authority on the recommendation of the treasurer to waive fees or whatever in cases. We've encouraged people to phone in, and if they have issues with paying because of this COVID-19, to call in, and we'll consider that. So it's something that the mayor could approve. We don't see the need for it right now, but the treasurer's going to do her analysis of the pay. And I'd be looking forward to that report. I know there's people out there suffering. As far as the waste site goes, we talk specifically about that. One of the things you want to do is help out residents who are suffering, who are financially. And we also recognize when you're staying at home, you're finding a lot more stuff around to throw out. But we also are keeping the waste sites open at the same hours and not compressing it, because we have to be concerned about social gatherings. And we don't want to encourage more people to press into the same space. And if we have a 2-for-1 sale or some sort of an amnesty, and some have done that, we can create a crowd at the waste site, which endangers the public and also endangers our staff, who are also, they're having trouble following social distancing when you're used to being in close proximity to people helping them out. So for now, we rejected that as a good means, just more because of the rush that it could create. That's all, Your Worship.
Councillor Fody, I'll recognize you, and then I have some points to make as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. Further to what Councillor Maybe had said, it's a good idea. We might be somewhat early in the stages right now. I think our Director of Social Services had encompassed that in your report, that people that need to reach out for help of any kind, they can do that. I'm a little leery of putting out a basket affair to all, because people being people, there will be people jump into that freebie, so to speak, just because it is available. I don't think our residents need to be shy in coming to us for assistance, and we shouldn't be shy in helping them. I think, as was mentioned by Councillor Grell or alluded to, I have spoke to a number of businesses in the past few days, and some of them are downright scared. Not because of the past few days, although some of them have seen a tremendous drop in business, but they're looking at the 3-month, 6-month window. And I won't go into details because some of them are very dark. But I think we need, as a council, to really sit down and look at such as the community planning services and our staff are doing. We need to look at a short term, a mid-term, and then, if need be, a long term, because I think we're gonna have residents who are gonna be asking for that.
Just to, before I take any further comments, to Councillor Maybe's point, I can assure you that none of the staff will be taking advantage of anybody in this hour of need. If they've come in and paid their taxes already, we say thank you. For those who are going to be in a situation that can't, we're certainly not going to levy huge, fees and interest on those. we're all in this together. So I can definitely appreciate the point. But in light of the comments that were made, it may be better serving the public if we have more of a long-term strategy. So those who can't pay right now, I would encourage them. There's an email on the website that was originally communicated. Just email the tax clerk saying, I can't get in to pay my taxes. I'm unable to pay my taxes. Please make a note on my file. And we will go through those, on every basis. But, I certainly think in this sort of situation that any small relief we can give people will give them some peace of mind. But that I'm concerned about residents. I'm equally or as much concerned about our businesses that employ our residents, who pay their wages so that they can pay their taxes just the same. And our treasurer is going to need to give us some sort of context in all of this, and it will be quite overwhelming, and we'll have a lot to deal with at that time, and some decisions that will have to be made at that point. So unless you want to put something forward, a motion at this point, it's up to you. Okay. Sorry, Councillor, maybe I'll let you speak to that.
Thank you, Your Worship. All the points are very well taken. Not an issue there, but I do want to reiterate that some of these people may not pay their taxes because they need the money now and in the future. So I wholeheartedly do not want to see any ratepayer in our jurisdiction worried about not paying it and getting penalized for it. And as I reiterated before, there are many who can and will still continue. But also, to Councillor Fode's point, a lot of businesses may feel the crunch and may have to hold back a little bit to retain, to get to that regain point. So I would like to see that we do our due diligence and make sure that these people are looked after in the short term as well as the long term. On the dumping situation, I see where we could have a run on things and have a mass dumping, but I don't know. I guess our personnel at the waste sites may need to judge an individual, because maybe there's some who really can't buy that ticket today but still need to get rid of that waste. And the personnel that are at the waste site do get to know everybody that's there quite well. So they would know fairly quickly whether somebody is in need of a little hand at that waste site. So I'd like to see that done too.
Councillor, I'm going to recognize the CEO, then Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just something that crossed my mind when you talked about dumping and recognizing, and the Director Goheen asked me to mention in terms of flushing things down the toilet. We've noticed an increase in wipes, and even if they say they're flushable, we want them in the garbage and not down, because we've noticed a big increase in that. So to the public, please put them in the garbage. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Gorell, and then Councillor Fode, and then we'll wrap this one up.
Thank you, Your Worship. And more points on this tax deadline. It occurs to me our next council meeting is April 6th, I believe, which is a couple of weeks. And perhaps we should have a report in front of us at that time. If my memory is right, we, in the bigger issue of drainage, for instance, certain measures were put in place so that people could spread their payments. There are options here for people who may be struggling with payments that are pretty simple, and maybe we do need a report that we could consider sooner than later. And there is obviously the broader 6 months down the road. Maybe that we can leave a little bit, but it would be nice for us to be able to tell people precisely where we stand on that, and maybe it's payments. Thanks.
Well taken, Councillor Gorell. So Councillor Fode, then Councillor Olkey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think one thing that maybe some of us are overlooking right here at the table tonight is a thank you we owe to our acting CAO, our mayor, our heads of our various departments, including the fire chief and works department. It's not hard following this, as most everybody is, that our township is out front and center on this, where other jurisdictions are not. I've been told and heard some stories about there are other areas that are either denying that it's as serious as it is or whatever other lax measures. But I want to thank everyone involved for leading us and putting us in a proactive position that we're where we are and that we're not falling behind and putting residents at risk. Thank you.
Councillor Olke, you want to make your point?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. In thinking about the future and follow-on effects, and not wishing to make trouble where there is none at this point, but something we might have to think about, if we have to distribute food aid to people who can't get to grocery stores, perhaps they can afford it, but they can't get there. Has anyone ever considered perhaps voluntary service by members of the fire department or elsewhere along these lines? If someone had to pick up a food parcel and take it to somebody. In a rural community, a lot of people look out for their neighbors and their extended families, but there are people who are still isolated in this community and could be more isolated as time goes on. It's just a thought at this point, but I think it's a thought we should at least keep at the back of our heads. Thank you.
I think that's something that could be brought up to the emergency measures team so that we can put that on the list of the laundry list of things that maybe we need to look into or look at finding ways that their services exist. Councillor Jameson, do you have anything to add to this discussion?
Are you speaking to me?
Yes, I am. Councillor Jameson.
Okay, I just have 2 points, if you can still hear me. One is up here in Ward 2, the social, economic, and cultural ties to the Rideau Lakes and so on are obvious to all of us. So, and I know without asking that our community services manager, business services director is actually in communication with Rideau Lakes Township, but I think it's important at this time that those communications channels up at this end are very much open, because it's the social services and everything from food banks to thrift shops and goodness knows what else, libraries and everything else that we're trying to accommodate. So I know Kim will be on top of that, but I wanted to put that on the record. The other comment I'll make based on listening to the staff is that I have a lot of trust and confidence in our staff. We put them in charge of in a situation that none of us know anything about, and I have a lot of trust in their talent and ability to get us through this. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. So I'll recognize the CAO, and then we'll wrap this part of the discussion up. I'll just make some points, and then we'll move into the closed session.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to confirm to Council that a report will be coming from the Treasurer on the taxation situation. We need no further direction. It will come at the next Council meeting.
Thank you. So it's not on the agenda, but the next thing I would like to discuss is the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, as well as kind of give my own mayor's update and frame in what you've heard tonight. So before you, councillors, you will find the update that was provided to me at the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville today at County Council by the CAO, Andy Brown. They are moving through the phases just like every other municipality. They, of course, have 440 staff members. We only have around 40. So there's a grave difference in how they have to react to these things. Having said that, there was some pointed discussion today at County Council, and they had not enacted their emergency measures group at that point, which a number of us disagreed with. Luckily, we had, and I will boast about our staff that we have taken this very seriously ever since last Thursday when the announcement was made that schools would be closed. I called a meeting, got the senior managers together Friday morning. The CAO was off site working on collective bargaining, attended via phone, and the staff met, and then we met at the end of the day to move into closing all the facilities. And then Monday was the next phase when we're still open to the public. But what the councillors need to realize is that we didn't close the office easily. But we did have a number of residents that had just returned from vacation that continued to come into the office and talk about their vacation and how great it was. And we can't have that. That's not acceptable in this particular scenario. Our staff are working hard to continue to process payments and be here to service residents. But the self-isolation, if you're returning from vacation, if you've been down south, if you've been abroad, it is so imperative that you follow this if we're going to flatten the curve. The United Counties are, just to tidy that up, they are moving into, I believe, in using the emergency measures group. So we should be getting updates. The health unit is moving to become a bit more nimble as well. I know that Dr. Stewart was down a number of staff members up until recently that were away, or one was ill, not with COVID-19, but just was unable to attend. So they were not necessarily, she was running around on her own a lot. So we should be getting more updates from that end. I know that, as I said earlier, this is my first emergency, if you will, and hopefully I hope that it's my last. I never want to see this, but what I do know is that this township is very well equipped and ready to tackle these issues head on. We've been in contact with our lawyers in regards to open meetings, and the MPP who had let us know a little bit ahead of time. I had reached out to Minister Clark to say, hey, if we need to meet, because at that point in time we didn't know whether or not we could meet, because when the declaration of the emergency was made, sanctions started to happen very quickly when restaurants had to close and those sort of things kept trickling down. So every hour it was something different. But just so you know, this, even though we don't have the meeting open to the public, having it live stream is considered an open meeting because this is a council meeting and not a committee of the whole. There's no participation at council meetings, generally speaking. So we're still in compliance with the Municipal Act. And so as far as all the things that have been discussed, I'm not going to rehash all of them with the CAO and Ms. Venditti and Ms. Goodman have brought up. We are working as best we can to make sure that the business of the township continues to move forward, to provide services and to be here for the residents who need us. But the one thing that I appreciate that each and every one of you made the point to come out tonight, because I know that some people don't want to, and I respect that. I know that some people are very concerned about social interaction in large groups. Luckily, we were able to space everybody out here this evening, so nobody was on top of one another. We're taking necessary precautions, and when we do the in-camera meeting, we will be doing so in this group, in this room. We will not be moving in camera room, so we won't be in close proximity and that sort of thing. So, and I can appreciate the fact that in the future, if we need to have electronic participation, that is definitely not frowned upon if that's something you wish to use. Councillor Gorell?
Thank you, Your Worship. And just for clarity, if we're canceling public meetings, does that mean Committee of the Wholes would be canceled?
Madam Clerk, I don't think the intention was to cancel a Committee of the Whole. It just we might have to figure out a way that people can provide questions live. But these are all things that we're trying to deal with as they come. But I'll let the clerk answer that.
Well, certainly the agendas are posted either the Wednesday or Thursday prior to the upcoming Monday meeting. So if any residents have any questions, they can certainly reach out to their council members to bring forward their questions or concerns at that meeting.
Councillor Gorell?
Could they use electronic reaching out, telephone, or something of that nature, same as we have been asked to?
I'm sure that we could set up an email that would be live during the council meetings so that if somebody wanted to email a question, there's no reason that we couldn't address that. These are changing times, so we're willing to adapt as best we can. Ms. Venditti, I'll recognize you and then I'll recognize Councillor Fody.
Thank you. If I could just add to that we have canceled some public meetings. So there were 3 public meetings scheduled for the prior to the committee of the whole meeting in April, 2 cell tower public consultations, as well as a consultation regarding a zoning amendment we were bringing forward with respect to cannabis. Notice of those cancellations is on the website, and we will schedule those for a later date. We have also canceled the Committee of Adjustment meeting for March.
Ms. Goodman?
And sorry, further to that, we will also be communicating where there are free Wi-Fi access points across the community at our libraries, outside this office, even, for example, for the public Wi-Fi side. So for people who are unable to be here and maybe not connect at home, that there will be those spots communicated or shared publicly so that they can access the live feed from those locations. So it might mean sitting in your car on your phone, but it's you know, if that's the best we can offer at this particular point, it's better than no access at all.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just thought I might jog your memory on a conversation you had with me a few days back on a phone call you received from our MP, Michael Barrett.
Thank you, Councillor Fody. MP Barrett reached out to me, I believe it was Monday evening, just to check in on us, to see how we were doing, and to ask us what changes we had made, if any, if we needed any support, if we had any residents that were coming back from abroad that were concerned, or if we ever got any calls in regards to being abroad, having troubles to get home, as well as commercial businesses that are located here that might be in logistics and commercial traffic through our border. He covered a whole host of things, and I must say that it was very nice that MP Barrett proactively reached out and offered his help, and just to let the public know that if your family, or someone you know who is traveling abroad that is having trouble getting home, there is assistance for those Canadians. They do not need to be stranded in other countries. They're trying to every possible way to get our people home, and if it's a financial need, there's help for that as well. So if for some reason you know of anybody in those situations, please direct their calls to MP Barrett's office. They are still working, although not taking appointments face-to-face at this point, but they are definitely getting back to people within a very reasonable amount of time. So thank you for reminding me of that. Councillor Mabey, and then we'll wrap this up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this is more in your bailiwick. And there has been some conversations about mortgages and holding back on some of those. To have you, through your connections, had any information about mortgage lending, people who are helping with people who are in need of some assistance?
Thank you for bringing that up. I will make a point of getting a link to put on our communication. I would say that 90% of lenders are putting some program into place if you have a mortgage with them that you can defer payments. And when I say defer, it doesn't mean that you have to make them up in the next short term. It would be if you had a 20 or 25 year amortization, you would have a 25 year plus 6 months amortization. It would just add them on to the end of the term or the amortization, depending on the lender. So lenders are definitely stepping up. I know the insurers, CMHC, Genworth, and Canada Guarantee are all coming forward, but it's very good information that can be disseminated down to people so that they can defer mortgage payments because, again, I'll reiterate, we're all in this together and everybody's trying to do what they can to ease the pain for individuals. I'll let you follow up.
Just as a follow-up, sometimes when you defer your payments like this, it can impact your credit score. So is there anything there?
I can't speak for every specific lender, but it should not affect your credit rating. The deferral is a voluntary thing, and if you are proactive. Now, the one thing I will say, like everywhere else, it's very difficult to get through on a customer service line right now. You have to be extremely patient. But know that there are ways to move your payments to the latter end of your term, but hopefully give you some relief in the interim. The banks don't want anybody's houses back, and that's not going to be the case through all of this. But I'll pass along those links to be added to the website so that the public can access them. Thank you for bringing that up. Is there any other questions of council of me and anything that I've done or have done along with staff over the last 5 days? Seeing none, we will move in camera. So the motion is on the floor from Councillor Olkey and second by Councillor Gorell, that council adjourn to forum in camera to consider labor relations or employee negotiations as it pertains to collective bargaining, and to consider personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, as it pertains to HR matters, and to consider litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed? Oh, affirmative. Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Thank you. Okay, we will move in camera. Thank you.